Hi, I'm Jelle.
Hi, I'm Gerben.
Gerben, so I think most people have heard of Git, and most people have heard about DevOps or Ops. So let's combine those two. Maybe people have heard of GitOps, but they're not really sure what that is.
Okay, so I hope to shine some light on it. So today we're going to talk about GitOps.
Yeah.
A little bit about what it is, what its goals are, how it compares to DevOps. Then we are going to show what kind of tools you could use if you want to implement that.
Right.
And then the big part, I hope the big part is the demo. So what we're going to do is we're going to build further on a cluster, on an AKS cluster. So the goal is getting GitOps to work in...
so not so much a deep dive, but at least a shallow, 1 foot in the pool, getting a feel for how to set this up.
To see what it is. So first we need to start with a little bit of introduction about GitOps. And what better is it to use than what you see here? It's a website of Weaveworks, and Weaveworks in 2017 invented this system. It's more like a technique than a whole way of working. If we want to compare it, for instance, with DevOps, DevOps is more like a cultural change in your team and to bring the ops and the dev in one team. GitOps, it's more like a technique that you could use.
Yeah, and is it a technique for people that are already in the DevOps mindset, or is that not?
Yes, definitely. So as a team, you have to be ready or capable, mature enough to do this kind of stuff. So in essence, what it boils down to is that you're going to use your Git repository as the main repository, the source of truth for everything, not only for your application code, because that's one part, that's the integration part.
That's how we're used to doing things.
Yeah, but also for your application infrastructure. So instead of you with your build tools telling what the infrastructure has to look like, what GitOps is doing, it's taking your Git repository, and then it will look for differences in your deployment or even on your infrastructure itself. It's more a declarative approach. So instead of you dictating procedural what's going to happen, you get a declarative approach. You say, okay, I want my environment to be like this, and your Git is the only repository, is the only source of truth. What you will also get is that instead of in your build pipeline you need to authenticate against your environment.
Correct.
You don't have to put those credentials anymore in your pipelines. No, it's your environment that's going to look at the repository, what's going to change or what has been changed.
Right, and this declarative approach, we know this from how we approach, for instance, Microsoft Azure, where if we use like a YAML pipeline, we're going to say, okay, I don't know how you're going to do it. You might change it in the coming 2 months, but this is how I want it to look like in the end.
Yes.
And we're now going to take that approach for the entire operations.
Yeah. And also, for the infrastructure. Yeah. So you're correct. So one of the things we can skim a little bit to this GitOps website. That's also the main goal is to have one source of truth for documentation, for your team. So if you want to change something to your environment, then the only thing that's going to change is that repository.
Yeah.
You can do it yourself, you can do manual synchronization, but what you could also do is, for instance with pipelines or GitOps actions, is to make it a really automated process. So you're going to move to no ops. So it's no ops, it's a technique about that you're doing everything automatic. You don't even know what kind of infrastructure is there. Everything just happens magically. You can move to that, but you can also go in between.
Right. So as a developer, black boxing stuff makes me really frightened. So how are we going to make sure that we feel in control when using GitOps?
Yeah, I think you can compare it maybe to like the whole serverless movement. So you're still in control with the things that matter, but the things that are infrastructure,
really boring.
Or plumbing, and that should. And one of the mindsets of GitOps is that even if somebody goes into your infrastructure, it has the rights to do so, and it will change some deployment. Then this way of working will make sure that it still gets synced back to the state that you have put into your Git repository or code repository, for that matters. But it will be self-contained.
Really cool.
So one thing about the theory that I want to show you, it's a nice picture here. So we discussed a bit about pipelines. So the classic way of working, or the normal way of working, is a push-based strategy. So you make some modification to your application, to your infrastructure code, and then your pipeline pushes everything to the environment. And if your environment changes, then the pipeline doesn't know that. So, and this is where at least the mindset of GitOps and also the tools that we're going to use a different approach. It's using a pool-based approach. So there is a thing in your cluster, most of the time it's called an operator, and that's constantly watching if something is changing. Maybe your images that they're pushing, maybe the code itself, maybe something in the cluster, and its only job is to make sure that it's the state that you desire. So the wanted state. It's a bit the same how Kubernetes itself works and what you also described. You just say, I want this state, and okay.
I don't know how, but
resolve it yourself. Fix it for me, please. And that's also what the GitOps mindset is.
As you said, there's pull-based. This is more of a push-based approach for this operator. So when we should never do this, of course, but you make a deployment in the push-based strategy, and you're like, I forgot to flick this setting. Oh no, I'll just log into the server, I'll change it up, and fine, it works. Which is bad practice, and we've all never done it, of course. In this push-based approach, that would not be an option.
Yeah. So you are then forced, at least by the system, to document your change.
Yeah.
Make that change in your Git repository, and then it gets. So then you're also documenting, and you're forcing yourself to do it the correct way. Yeah. Because if you log into your server and then your change gets synced back, then okay, it's still broken. So it makes sure that also when another team member of you is going to look at the source, it knows for sure that is the state that is expected of the cluster.
And how would you do this in like an audit-heavy environment where an exact model version is needed and there can be no changes for, I don't know, 6 months because of financial regulation or laws or whatever? Is this not a correct approach, or?
You can split out in multiple environments. So for your production environment, it's actually very good for auditing, because you only have to show your Git log to make sure that nothing has changed.
Right.
And then you will use another branch or something else for your development. And you can do it in multiple environments. So you're not forced to doing this only in one environment.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that's a bit about the theory of GitOps. So what do we need to actually make it in practice? There are a few tools that we can use. One is called ArgoCD. The other one is called Flux. If you look it up, if you look GitOps up, then you can see different people preferring different tools.
That never happens.
Yeah, but to give a little bit, Flux is generally simpler to configure. It has a CLI, but Argo is considered, at least by the community, to be more like enterprise ready. It has a nice UI, it has SSO integration. Yeah. It's a bit more heavy on setting up. Both do the same thing. They make GitOps available for your cluster.
So as a developer, I want to just try it out real quick. Just start up with Flux, but if you really want to use this in your enterprise setup, then
you can use
the community would advise Argo.
Yeah. So what do we need to set up a cluster? ArgoCD is doing the continuous delivery part. So it will do the part where it takes your images, takes your infrastructure and builds it. What you have to do yourself with other integration tools like GitHub Actions or Jenkins or other build servers is to make sure that your image gets built and then pushed to a registry, and then you have to change your definition files. You can also do that automatic, so that you have the possibility to make GitHub Actions that bump the version. So the only thing that they have to do is bump the version, commit, and then ArgoCD will see, okay, there is something different.
There's something for me to do.
Yeah, there's something for me to do. So that's ArgoCD. Now, if we dive deep into ArgoCD itself, This picture gives a little bit of overview, but what it's doing is Git at the center. You merge a PR, you commit something. The operator, the ArgoCD operator, is watching your environment, and it will sync it or not.
It sounds really easy.
Yeah.
But how easy is it to do it in practice?
Yeah. So yeah, let's demo it and let's see how it works and set up a cluster, or at least set up the ArgoCD. Yeah, we have to jump into something else in our browser. Nice code editor. So what we're going to do, I prepared a GitHub with a very small API, a minimal API.
Whew, it would be interesting to dive deeper into that, but let's save that for another time.
That would be cool. So, and next to our program code, we have some simple definitions for Kubernetes. One is a simple deployment, and another one is a service. So we can actually see how this is working. So what I'm now going to show is I'm manually going to tweak the versions. As I said, you can set it up in jobs, but for this demonstration, it's manual. Yeah, and because we need a lot of code, I prepared a markdown. So I'm going to show that markdown also for myself, because it's easier to demonstrate. So what we're going to do, we're going to use our demo Git, and what we're going to do is I prepared a Kubernetes cluster. Let's show it so that I can see it. Yeah. So the first thing that I will do is kubectl and get namespace. Normally you would check if it's empty. I already set up ArgoCD. But if you want to set it up yourself, it's one simple line where you apply an installation YAML from ArgoCD, and that will deploy all the ArgoCD stuff in the cluster. So resources, services, everything.
And this is a one-time thing, or?
Yeah, this is a one-time thing. So you install it in one namespace, one time this installation, and then you're good to go. What Argo is doing is it's also creating default password, or at least it's generating a password, and it's storing that in a secret for us to view. I will view that password. Let me see if I can paste this in. So we will get a temporary password. It's a base46 encoded password. So we have to put it to a tool. I will do it. But first, I will make a port forward to the ArgoCD cluster, because I didn't do any ingress stuff.
Right.
It's running there. So let's do that.
Okay.
So then I can show the UI of Argo. We're going to copy that one. So there it is. Start the port forwarding. So now the port forwarding is running. And then, like I said, we need to decode the password. Don't worry, I will bring down the cluster. So when this video is up, then this password will be gone. But it's important to know, if you're going to set this up, you need to change the password and you have to delete this secret.
Right.
Because they are just giving it you so you can get it out of the cluster. So it's important to delete it actually. Now we're going to local host port 84, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So you also get a certificate warning. In a production environment, you want to use something like Let's Encrypt or something to have a proper certificate. But in this case, for this demo, it's just it's a certificate, a self-signed certificate. So we're going to log in with our password.
And the most predictable username ever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's admin. Yeah. So it's empty. No applications are there yet. So what we are going to do is we're going to create an application. We have to point it to our Git. Let me see where there's the URL.
So the terminology app here refers to to one application environment or to an entire?
It refers to one repository. So you're linking it to a repository because that's the most important part. So let's call this one demo. A default project. Sync policy is manual, so we have to do it by hand. We have to sync by hand. We'll see later how that's working out.
For demo purposes.
Yeah. So our repository URL, we have to end it with .git. Our revision is had, so you can see here that you can also put all other revisions. And I know that our infra code is in infra. So now that's all said and done. We can create it. So now we're going to create the application.
And I can see that behind your cluster URL.
Yeah, sorry, cluster URL, forgot to do the cluster URL and the namespace. We put it in the namespace and then create it.
Yeah, and I could see from the little editors YAML that behind the screens, this is all basically you having a little UI in front of a YAML file.
Yes, yeah, so you can also get to ArgoCD with a CLI, integrated, but this is a nice way to show it.
I mean, this looks prettier in a demo at least.
Yeah, for sure. What you can see now is that it's out of sync.
Which makes sense.
Which makes sense, and because we do manual syncing, so in a normal environment or in an environment where you have more automation, then you can also do an automatic sync. But what we're now going to do is synchronize everything. And what you can see is also when we go to the details of this application is that from the only definition that we gave was our GitHub. And it sees that we have one service definition, we have a deployment, and it will make all the services and the pods for us that we specified in the files. Right. So now when we are going to look at what pods are there, we can see that in our demo environment there's actually this demo or this pod running. Yeah. So this is how Argo is doing that. So let's see what's happening when we change the version. So
all right.
I have it now to 0.1.
So let's pretend that we made a change.
Yeah. So we actually have to do that change.
All right.
Yeah. So we have to do that change.
So if we up the version number with no changes.
Yes. Yeah. So in preparation of this talk. There is a 0.2 version already in our Docker Hub. So if we're going to change this one to 0.2, so now we have we have a change. We have multiple changes, but one change that we're interested in. So it's our demo, it's our deployments, it's our version bump. So we're going to name this version bump.
Great commit name.
Very good. Okay, so we committed it, and now we're going to sync this. So now our version or YAML for a pod is now in 0.2, and now we can get back to Argo and see if it is picking that up. I think it needs some help from us. That we sync everything. Yes, should be there. Okay, so we bumped that one. Let's see if it's... Because what it should do now is that it should be out of sync.
Right.
So it's always nice to...
make sure that it doesn't work immediately, because otherwise this would be too easy.
Let's go... I want to see how it's doing in the GitHub. So I have it here. So let's open up a GitHub. And it actually did the version bump. So it's also there in the deployment 0.2. Yeah, so it's synced, and I think why it is synced is in preparation of this talk I already synced it once, so that 0.2 version is already there, And
with your 0.1, you didn't really convert anything.
You didn't really convert it. So now it's back to the original version.
Which proves the point that I made, that you need some actual changes for it to really pick it up.
To really pick it up.
So if you would now prepare a version 0.3 with some actual changes, it would say out of sync.
Yes.
And then you, because of your configuration, you would have to manually sync it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, because of time constraints, maybe let's not do that live.
Oh, we can do it in another talk, maybe.
Yeah, for example. And we get that, well, we get the idea now that this is actually how you could really easily make sure that you, that the environment is included in your, under your control, basically.
Yes, yeah, and that there's one repository that contains the truth. And that you do all the changes from there, and then that's picked up by something like Argo or Flux.
So really cool. What's some use cases where you would advise looking into GitOps?
Yeah, I think actually all places where you have a more mature DevOps already in place, you have a way to update your application infrastructure already. And you really want to make sure that that definition that you have, that is the base of your whole application infrastructure.
Yeah. Okay, really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for showing us this.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.